Our text this morning is one of those weird passages. It's a weird story. Oftentimes, a lot of preachers skip it because they don't know quite what to do with it. But it's the very ones that they skip I love to do. It's a story of the Transfiguration. I was doing some reading this week. The Jesus Seminar is now very old, and I don't even know if they're meeting anymore, but this is one of those stories that they simply dismiss. And they dismiss it on the basis that it can't be, as if we know ahead of time what can and can't be, as if in the vastness of our knowledge we are able to foreclose on what may and may not or may not happen in life. This happened according to particularly Peter, James, and John, and Peter references it later in one of his letters. And it's a powerful moment that we may not understand, but must we understand it for it to be real. Hear the word of God as it comes to us from the Gospel of Matthew. Six days later, Jesus took Peter and the two brothers, James and John, and led them up to a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Jesus' appearance was transformed so that his face shone like the sun and his clothes became white as light. Suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared and began talking with Jesus. Peter exclaimed, "Lord, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I'll make 3 shelters as memorials, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But even as he spoke, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy. Listen to him." The disciples were terrified and fell face down on the ground. Then Jesus came over and touched them. "Get up," he said, "don't be afraid." And when they looked up, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus. As they went back down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Then his disciples asked him, "Why did the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes?" Jesus replied, "Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready. But I tell you, Elijah has already come. But he wasn't recognized, and they chose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer." Then the disciples realized he was talking about John the Baptist. May God add his understanding to this hearing of his word. In the words of Frederick Buechner, listen to your life. Listen to what happens to you, because it is through what happens to you that God speaks. It's in language that's not always easy to decipher, but it's there, powerfully, memorably, unforgettably. Listen to your life. Listen to what happens to you. Hear beyond that which you might write off as mere mundane experience. Listen to your life. Driving down Goodlet Frank this morning, I saw what had to be a cool grandpa. I am a nerd grandpa. I take joy if my kids say to me, "Grandpa, you're such a nerd." Well, this is a cool grandpa, and those are good grandpas too. He's driving in his convertible Maserati. And he's got what looks like his daughter and then 2 grandsons behind, and they're having the time of their lives coming down. And it struck me as I watched them, and it was wonderful to pull up alongside them and see the kids laughing in the back. But it struck me, why do that? Why the convertible? Why the whole experience? Grandpa's not getting anything out of that. But what he's doing He's giving something to those kids. He's giving them an experience. He's giving them a moment to listen to their life and to acknowledge and recognize something that is happening to them. And that which was happening to those kids was fun. And that which was happening to that grandpa was beauty and a deep joy, because he could check that rearview mirror and see those little faces in the back. And it was beautiful. And how long can we look at the face of beauty? If you try to make a left turn out of Vanderbilt Beach Drive right after the sun sets, you'll wait for a long time, because of all the people who've been out on the beach watching and looking into the face of beauty. And it is in such instances that somehow, some way, there's a voice that is speaking to us. There's a word that is being transmitted to our hearts. Think about it. This world doesn't have to be beautiful. But every time we look beyond all of the stuff that we do and look at that which God has done, untouched by human agency, it is so beautiful. This little boy, so beautiful. And so it is in experience that God is constantly speaking to us, that He is regularly trying to get us to take notice, not just of the beauty that surrounds us, but the love that bears that beauty and brings it to our hearts. So in this story, Peter has just, up in Caesarea Philippi, has just been asked by, as Jesus was asking all the disciples, who do people say that I am? And some say, and they were responding, some say John, some say one of the prophets. And Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And so he has made this confession of faith, and from that moment on, Jesus is making his move down to Jerusalem. He's making his move now to that place where he is about to fulfill the calling to which he's been called. Had that not been said by Peter, one wonders if he would have taken a few more steps to the north and stepped off the stage of history entirely. We would have had no Jesus, we would have had no awareness. But the confession of Peter was such that affirmed the ministry that Jesus was to undertake. So they're making their way down. And on the way, they go up to one of the mountains. We don't know which one. There's all kinds of speculation which one. And at night, suddenly, there is this strange experience where Jesus is glowing white and bright. With him is Moses, and with him is Elijah. And they're all glowing. That's why it's a weird text. They're all reflecting something that is beyond normal human experience, that which is beyond that which we would ever anticipate seeing. And Peter sees it. And he says, well, Jesus, you want me to build some tents, some tabernacles, some little shrines, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. What do we do with that which we cannot understand, with that which we can't wrap our minds around it? We try to do something with it to make sense of it. We try to put some structure around it and thereby somehow domesticate it. And instead, Jesus simply proceeds, and he tells the disciples, don't say anything after this until it becomes fulfilled, that which he was to embark upon, his death and his resurrection. Until that time, they were to simply keep it zipped, say nothing about it. and simply experience it, simply take it in. And in that moment, one wonders, was that really a weird moment? Was that an instance in which heaven broke in, where God broke all the laws of nature and all of a sudden we saw things in a new way? Was this really an unusual experience? Or was this something that had a far more profound character than that? Was this something that tapped far deeper than that? In other words, when a grandpa's driving down Goodlet Frank Road and looks through his rearview mirror and sees those little kids, what does he see? What's striking his own awareness at that moment? If not something that is glorious. That which is beautiful is also that which is glorious. That which goes beyond what we would anticipate or expect to see. That which is a part of everyday life actually contains something beyond itself. A sunset is not just a sunset. A sunset points beyond itself. And it points beyond itself not just to the scientific structures of sky and light that cast all those colors into the air. It points beyond itself not just to the towering clouds and the thunderheads of summer that cause us to be so overwhelmed with the beauty, but something beyond. Something that bears glory. The glory of God. Moses, when he came down from Sinai, his face was glowing. He had to put a veil on. Because after a while, that glory fades. So he veiled his face. And here it is on that Mount of Transfiguration, taken away. The veil is removed once again. And because the veil is removed, the disciples can see. The disciples can see in a new way. They can understand what they otherwise would not have seen. I wonder if we had eyes to see and ears to hear, if we wouldn't see beyond that which is so mundane in regular life. Let me share with you from C.S. Lewis as he closes this magnificent sermon of his called The Weight of Glory. It's hardly possible for us to think too often or too deeply about our neighbor. It is a serious thing to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long, we are in some degree helping each other to one or other of these destinations. It is in the light of these overwhelming possibilities that we should conduct all our dealings with one another, all friendships, all loves, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilization, these are mortal, and their life is to our life as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. You have never met a normal, ordinary human being. Every one, he goes on to say, with the one exception of the Blessed Sacrament, there is nothing more precious presented to our senses, nothing more sacred presented to our senses than our neighbor. There are no ordinary people. And maybe, if we had eyes to see, as C.S. Lewis here suggests, what if we saw the glory of God shining through our neighbor? Maybe what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration was that the veil was taken away, the veil with which we look at all of life, the veil with which we interpret all of our experience. And instead, we saw clearly, the disciples saw clearly that night what is real and true. We think we know what is real and true. We've got our scientific method, we've got all of that, and that explains an awful lot and helps us an awful lot. But we cannot see it all. Maybe the reality is not that the Mount of Transfiguration is a weird experience, a weird thing. Maybe this is weird. Maybe this is that which is a violation of reality. Maybe this experience has been somehow corrupting of that which God has made us to know and to experience. There was a young family, a young couple a little 3-year-old girl, and this little girl was so excited because mommy was going to have another baby. So this little girl entered into the whole process of preparation and was just so excited. And then one day her mom and dad came home with a brand new little baby brother for her. And she, of course, as a 3-year-old little girl, was just beside herself with joy. And there was kind of a normal family life until that little boy was about 6 months old and not quite so fragile anymore. And an awful lot of fun, a lot of smiles, and all of that we see in 6-month-olds. And then the 3-year-old girl asked mom and dad an interesting question. She wanted to go into the baby's room without them, alone, with the door closed. Just her and the baby. Go in and be with that baby. Now, mom and dad were a little worried about this. They know about sibling rivalry. They know that young one has probably been getting all the attention of mom and dad, and she might be feeling left out, and she might want to have an opportunity to whack the little guy. So the parents are very hesitant and reticent to do anything to allow this to happen. And then they remember that they have those little monitors. They got the monitor in the room so they can hear and see through that monitor what's going on. So one evening they decided, because this little girl was persisting, decided to let her into the room. So they let her in, she closed the door, and then they ran to the other room to watch the monitor. And they saw that little girl leaning over the crib. And she said to her little brother, "Bobby, tell me about God, because I'm beginning to forget. Tell me about God, because I'm beginning to forget." The simple truth of this life is that we come from God. We will return to Him as He embraces us with His love. And we can live this life most fully when we remember and when we see with the eyes that God has given to all of His children, no matter how old we are, given to all of His children to see the wonder and the glory of that which He has made. Apostle Paul says, "Lo, I will tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed." The mystery was not death. The mystery is life itself. That we are here. That we have breath that animates not just our bodies, but our spirits, our hopes and dreams and anticipations. The mystery is that God made us, and God has given us a destination. We might one day be with Him. And until that day, have glimpses, have moments where life is transfigured and we see through and beyond the veil. You bow with me in prayer. Open our eyes, O Lord, that we might see the wonder, the mystery, especially of those who are closest to us. Especially, Lord, of those who might be a little difficult for us. Especially those, O Lord, who in their own unique way bear your image and likeness. And may we see beyond all of our resistances and see through to your personal intent for all of us. We ask this in the name of your Son, the risen Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.